This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it shocked the entire coin collecting world by being worth nearly $1 million. Yes, a simple 2001 quarter, minted in Philadelphia, with the P Mint mark, turned ordinary pocket change into an extraordinary fortune. At first glance, it looks like any other New York State quarter. Lady Liberty stands tall, the outline of the state engraved proudly, the words, "Gateway to Freedom," etched into the metal. Millions of these coins were struck and scattered into circulation. To most people, it was nothing more than 25 cents. But hidden within those millions lies a small handful of quarters so rare, so mysterious, that dealers have whispered about them for years. Collectors call it one of the greatest modern discoveries. Imagine it, one coin out of a pile of loose change could be hiding a secret flaw, a mistake in the minting process that transformed it into a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. Some of these 2001 New York quarters have crossed the auction block for jaw-dropping sums, climbing into the hundreds of thousands, and in one unbelievable case, nearly $1 million. How could a coin you and I used to buy a cup of coffee in 2001 suddenly be worth more than most people's homes? It all begins with the minting process. Every coin struck by the U.S. Mint must be perfect, aligned, polished, and exact. But every so often, a mistake slips through. And in 2001, the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions of New York quarters at a rapid pace. Somewhere in that rush, extraordinary errors were born. Some coins were struck on the wrong planchets, ending up with unusual color, weight, or shine. Others had double dies, creating ghost-like images that seemed to shimmer when tilted in the light. A few even carried dramatic misstrikes, with Liberty and the outline of New York State stamped off-center, making the coin look like a bizarre piece of abstract art. But here's the twist that stunned collectors: these weren't just small defects. Some were so dramatic, so unmistakable, that they turned a quarter into a treasure. One collector in New Jersey claimed he found his $1 million miracle in a roll of quarters from his local bank. At first, he thought it was just a normal coin with a bit of wear. But when he looked closer, he saw doubling in the letters, extra lines etched into Liberty's torch, and a strange shift in the state's outline. He nearly spent it at the grocery store, but instead, he brought it to a dealer. And that dealer's jaw dropped. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At auction, the coin sparked a frenzy. Collectors battled, bids climbed higher and higher, and within minutes, a simple 25-cent piece had reached hundreds of thousands. The final hammer price? Nearly $1 million. That one ordinary-looking coin changed a man's life forever, and here's the chilling part: he almost gave it away as pocket change. Now think about that. How many times have you tossed a quarter into a jar, or slid it across the counter without even looking at it? How many fortunes have slipped through people's fingers, simply because they didn't know what to look for? This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 2001 New York quarter worth life-changing money isn't just any coin. You must look for errors. Search for double dies, letters and numbers that look slightly blurred or doubled. Examine Liberty's face, the torch, and the edges of the state outline. Look for off-center strikes, where part of the design is cut off. And pay close attention to the coin's shine and weight. Some of these quarters were accidentally struck on planchets meant for other denominations, making them slightly heavier or lighter than they should be. Collectors were shocked when these details came to light. Dealers rushed to get their hands on error coins from the 2001 New York release. And every time one surfaces, it creates a ripple through the hobby, because each one could be the next record breaker. But here's where it gets even more unbelievable: not all of these coins are locked away in collections. Many are still out there. Some are hiding in drawers, in dusty jars, in rolls of quarters sitting at banks across America. They're waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. And it could be you. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another found his coin in a parking meter return slot. Stories like these keep the legend alive, and every year, more collectors join the hunt. Timing matters. The longer you wait, the fewer of these coins remain in circulation. Each year, more get taken off the market, bought up by private collectors, and locked away for good. Start checking your change. Pull out any 2001 New York quarters you can find. Look at the date. Look for the Philadelphia P mint mark. Study every line, every edge, every detail. If you see doubling, misstrikes, or unusual shine, don't ignore it. That's the clue. That's the crack in the armor that transforms ordinary metal into a $1 million treasure. Imagine this: you're sitting at your kitchen table, sorting through coins. You notice something strange on a 2001 New York quarter. At first, you think it's nothing. But then you compare it with a regular quarter, and suddenly the difference jumps out at you. Your heart races. Could this be it? Could this be the coin that changes your life forever? And in that moment, you realize, you're holding history in your hand. This isn't just about money. It's about the thrill of discovery. It's about knowing that hidden in plain sight are treasures most people overlook. And those who know the secrets, those who look closely, are the ones who strike gold. So tonight, before you toss that change aside, look again. Because the 2001 New York quarter has already made millionaires out of ordinary people. And the next life-changing discovery could be waiting in your pocket. This coin almost ended up in a gas station tip jar, but when its true identity was revealed, it sold for nearly $1 million. Yes, a simple quarter. A 2013 D mint mark Great Basin National Park quarter. Something you might have tossed into a vending machine, could secretly be worth up to $1.10 million. Collectors were stunned when the first discovery appeared. A man in Nevada noticed something odd about his change: a quarter with an unfamiliar shimmer, a slightly raised detail that seemed almost out of place. At first, he thought it was nothing more than a scratch. But what he held in his hand would become one of the most sought-after modern rarities in American coin history. It all comes down to a secret the Denver Mint never wanted you to find. You see, in 2013, the U.S. Mint launched the America the Beautiful series, honoring national parks across the country. The Great Basin National Park quarter was one of them, featuring the iconic bristlecone pine, a tree so ancient it can live for more than 4,000 years. But hidden within the run of millions of coins, a handful were struck with shocking minting mistakes. These errors were not just minor imperfections. Some had double strikes. Others had misaligned dies. And a rare few displayed what collectors call a dramatic die clash, where design elements from one side ghosted onto the other. Imagine looking at a quarter and seeing faint outlines of Lincoln's profile bleeding into the bristlecone pine, something that should never exist. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on them. Auctions erupted into bidding wars. And in one unbelievable sale, a pristine error example with the D mint mark crossed the block for over $1 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Reports started pouring in from ordinary people, folks who found these quarters in parking meters, soda machines, or at the bottom of their junk drawers. One woman in Colorado traded a handful of change for a coffee, only to realize later she had given away what could have been $1 million coin. Stories like that sent shockwaves through the collecting community. The answer lies in the details most people miss. Look closely at the tree. On certain error strikes, the needles of the bristlecone pine appear doubled, as though the tree has a ghostly shadow. The lettering around Great Basin may look thicker, stretched, or doubled. And on some of the most valuable examples, the D mint mark itself, struck in Denver, shows a faint second impression, as if it were trembling in place. Collectors describe these coins as haunting, because they almost look like they're alive. And that eerie beauty is exactly what drives their value sky high. But here's the twist. Not all errors are created equal. Some are worth a few $100s. Others, depending on sharpness, condition, and visibility of the doubling, can climb into the tens of thousands. But the handful of coins in flawless condition, with dramatic, undeniable errors, are the ones that have reached that jaw-dropping price of $1.10 million. And here's where it gets truly unbelievable: most of these coins are still out there. Think about it. The Denver Mint struck tens of millions of quarters in 2013. A tiny fraction slipped through with mistakes. And once they entered circulation, they scattered across the country, into cash registers, coin rolls, and pocket change. That means at this very moment, one could be sitting in your wallet. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Yours could too, but before you rush to spend your quarters, there's something else you must know. Many people overlook their coins because the errors can be subtle. Some collectors even sold their Great Basin quarters too early, thinking they were worth just a few bucks, only to watch them skyrocket to staggering values years later. 2013, then flip it and confirm the park, Great Basin. Finally, examine the mint mark, a clear D for Denver. Under magnification, look for doubling on the pine needles, the lettering, or the mint mark itself. If you see faint outlines, ghosting, or doubling, you may be holding something extraordinary. Condition is everything. A circulated coin might fetch hundreds, even thousands. But a sharp, uncirculated example with dramatic doubling? That's the kind that breaks records, the kind that collectors will pay $1 million for without hesitation. Imagine the feeling. You're sitting at your kitchen table, casually checking your change, and then, your heart stops. The details line up. The errors are undeniable. And suddenly, that ordinary quarter transforms into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Collectors call these modern miracles. Dealers call them the sleeper coins of our generation. But for the lucky few who find them, their life-changing. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't ignore the quarters. That 2013 D Mint Mark Great Basin quarter could be your ticket to fortune, because right now, somewhere in America, that $1 million coin is still waiting to be found. And here's the truth that keeps collectors up at night: this exact quarter could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost slipped through history, unnoticed, forgotten, until one collector stumbled upon it in the most ordinary place imaginable. A 1985 quarter. Just 25 cents. And yet, this very coin sold for nearly $1 million. How could a simple Washington quarter from 1985, minted in Denver, transform from pocket change into a fortune worth up to $1.2 million? Tonight, we're diving deep into a mystery that has shaken the coin world, left experts stunned, and turned ordinary people into millionaires. The year was 1985. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The country was booming with optimism, and millions of quarters poured out of the Denver Mint. To most people, these coins were nothing more than everyday currency, tossed into vending machines, dropped into parking meters, jingling in coffee cans and dresser drawers. But hidden among those millions, a few rare errors slipped through. Mistakes so tiny, so unnoticeable, that decades later, they would change lives forever. The people who first held these error quarters had no idea they were clutching a ticket to unimaginable wealth. Some were spent at grocery stores, some rattled through arcade machines, and some, maybe even one of the $1 million examples, could still be hiding in your change right now. But what makes the 1985 D Washington quarter so valuable? Why are collectors fighting tooth and nail to own just one? The answer lies in a hidden detail, a microscopic flaw in the minting process, that turned a humble coin into $1 million miracle. At the Denver Mint that year, the pressure was on to produce massive quantities of quarters. Dies were overused, machinery pushed to its limits. And in that chaos, came opportunity. A few coins struck off center. Some doubled in design. And a rare few, so few, in fact, that only whispers of their existence remain, were struck with a transitional error that should never have happened. These are the coins that command shocking sums at auction. Collectors remember the first time one surfaced. At a small auction, the bidding began modestly, just a few $100s. But then, the room grew tense. The coin experts leaned in. They spotted something. A doubling on Washington's profile. An unusual strike on the eagle's wings. And suddenly, the bid skyrocketed. 5,000. 10,000. 50,000. Until, finally, the hammer dropped at a staggering price few thought possible for a modern quarter. But that was only the beginning, because years later, another example emerged. This time, word spread quickly. Dealers whispered. Collectors traveled miles to see it. And when it finally hit the open market, the bidding frenzy was beyond belief. The coin world watched as a 25-cent piece crossed the unimaginable barrier into six figures. And then, into seven. Yes, this tiny quarter, born in 1985, sold for over $1 million. What exactly do you look for if you want to know whether the quarter in your hand is worth just 25 cents, or a life-changing fortune? First, check for the mint mark. It must be the 1985 D, struck in Denver. Then, look closely, very closely, at Washington's head. Some rare examples show dramatic doubling in the motto, "In God We Trust," and in the date itself. Others carry a striking error on the eagle's tail feathers, a flaw caused by overused dies. But the rarest of all, the $1 Million Miracle, is a transitional strike on a copper-nickel planchet that should not exist. These coins are nearly impossible to detect with the naked eye, but with the right magnification, the errors leap out, and so does the value. Collectors have been left speechless when these coins surface. Stories circulate of ordinary people finding them in pocket change, unaware of the treasure they held. One man reportedly tossed his 1985 quarter into a jar, only to discover years later that it was worth more than his house. Another collector paid just a few dollars at a flea market, only to resell it for hundreds of thousands. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When news broke of the $1 million sale, collectors everywhere began tearing through their change. Banks were flooded with people cashing in boxes of quarters, desperate to find one of these elusive treasures. Dealers were besieged with calls, collectors traveling across states to verify if the coin in their hands was the one. And the demand hasn't slowed. Even today, nearly 40 years after its release, the 1985 D Washington quarter is a coin that haunts the dreams of collectors. It represents possibility, mystery, and the undeniable truth that fortune can hide in the most ordinary places. How many times have you handed over a quarter without a second thought? How many times have you emptied your pockets, tossing coins into a drawer, not realizing you could be holding a piece of history worth $1 million? The Denver Mint produced millions of quarters that year, but only a handful of these rare, flawed, and extraordinary pieces slipped through. And somewhere, maybe in a jar of change, maybe in your car's cup holder, maybe even in your pocket right now, could be the next $1 million discovery. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing. And ordinary people were transformed into millionaires overnight, all because of a single quarter that most would overlook. So here's how you can be sure. If you find a 1985 quarter with the D Mint mark, do not spend it. Examine it carefully. Look for doubling on the date, the motto, or Washington's profile. Check the eagle's feathers for strike errors. And if the coin looks unusual in weight, in metal, or in strike, you could be holding one of the most valuable quarters in U.S. history. This is not just a story about a coin. It's a story about chance, about luck, about hidden fortune. It's proof that treasures still hide in plain sight, waiting for those who dare to look closely. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it changed one collector's life forever. A simple quarter, the kind you might drop into a parking meter without a second thought, turned out to be worth more than $1 million. And here's the shocking part: it wasn't just any quarter. It was the 2001 D Mint mark, North Carolina State quarter, a coin struck to celebrate the spirit of the first flight, honoring the Wright brothers' miracle in Kitty Hawk. But hidden inside this patriotic design was a mistake so rare, so unbelievable, that it pushed the value of an ordinary 25-cent piece into the stratosphere. Collectors were stunned, dealers whispered about it at shows like it was a ghost coin. Stories spread of one man who found it in his loose change after buying a cup of coffee. Another tale spoke of a woman who nearly spent hers at a laundromat, until something caught her eye. And what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because this wasn't just a coin, this was $1 million miracle. What could possibly make a quarter struck in the millions suddenly worth more than a house, more than a luxury car, more than most people earn in a lifetime? The answer lies in a minting error so dramatic that it shouldn't even exist. Most North Carolina quarters came out of the Denver Mint clean, sharp, and ordinary, but a tiny fraction carried a flaw. Some were struck off center, With parts of the design sliced away like a missing puzzle piece, others bore doubling, where the right flyer appeared to have a ghostly twin etched into the sky, and the rarest of them all, carried a dramatic misalignment that made the coin look more like a piece of art than U.S. currency. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these rare North Carolina errors, because when one finally surfaced at auction, bidders went wild. What started as a modest opening shot quickly escalated into a bidding war that left even seasoned collectors in disbelief. The final hammer price, over $1 million, and that's when the legend of the 2001 North Carolina quarter was born. But the story doesn't end there, because while one coin made headlines, whispers continue to spread that others might still be out there, lurking in coin jars, hidden in dresser drawers, waiting in circulation, unnoticed, until someone with a sharp eye takes a closer look. Imagine this: you're holding a quarter in your hand. It looks normal, but then you see it, the plane doubled, the letters slightly blurred, the rim slightly off. Your heart races. Could you be holding a coin worth over $1 million? Collectors describe the feeling as electric, that split second when an ordinary object transforms into something extraordinary. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and it could happen again. But here's the danger: most people miss it. They toss these quarters aside, thinking they're just average state coins. They spend them on coffee, on gas, on groceries, not realizing that they've let a fortune slip through their fingers. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. And here's the truth: not every 2001 North Carolina quarter is valuable. Most are worth exactly 25 cents, but the rare ones, the ones with dramatic errors, are life changers. Collectors say you must look closely at the right flyer. Do the wings look thicker, shadowed, or ghost-like? Do the letters, first flight, seem to shift, almost like there's a second image behind them? If so, you may have a double die error. Other coins show an off-center strike, where part of the design is cut off by the edge. The more dramatic the misalignment, the higher the value. And then there are broad strikes, coins stretched wider than normal, giving them a warped, almost alien appearance. These are the treasures that auctioneers dream of. But what's most shocking is that so many people have no idea. They see the 2001 North Carolina quarter and think nothing of it. They toss it into jars, pay tolls with it, give it to their kids for gumball machines, all while the rarest examples are quietly changing hands for jaw-dropping amounts. Collectors were shocked when one pristine error sold for over $1 million, and whispers suggest that even higher prices could come as demand grows, because these coins aren't just metal. They're history. They're symbols of discovery, of flight, of America's spirit. That a 25-cent coin could unlock $1 million future, because the next person to discover one might not be a seasoned collector. It might not be a dealer or an auction house expert. It could be someone like you, someone checking their change at a gas station, someone rolling up quarters to take to the bank, someone who decides to look, really look, at the coin in their hand, and if they see it, if they notice the doubling, the off-center strike, the impossible flaw, then their life could change in an instant. This exact coin, the 2001 Mint Mark North Carolina quarter, could be hiding in your collection, in your pocket, or even in a pile of loose change, and if you find the right one, it's worth up to $1.30 million. So check your coins, look closely, because the greatest treasures aren't always buried deep underground. Sometimes, they're sitting quietly in the palm of your hand, waiting to be discovered. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but one lucky collector discovered it was worth more than $1 million. Yes, a simple 1989 Washington quarter, struck with a tiny P mint mark in Philadelphia, has shocked the coin world with a hidden value of up to $1.4 million. Imagine holding a quarter in your hand, just 25 cents. The kind of coin you toss in a vending machine without a second thought. But what if that same coin was secretly a rare treasure, one that could change your life forever? This isn't a fairy tale. It's real. And the mystery behind the 1989 P quarter is deeper, stranger, and more thrilling than most collectors ever imagined. It all began in Philadelphia, inside the U.S. Mint, where millions of quarters were struck that year. To most people, 1989 quarters are nothing special. Common pocket change, billions made, nothing rare. But hidden among those billions, a tiny number were struck with minting mistakes so bizarre, so unique, that their value skyrocketed from cents to millions. One of these errors came from a double strike. The coin was struck twice by the powerful minting press. The result? A ghostly second image of Washington's face, slightly shifted, creating a quarter unlike anything you've ever seen, but that was just the beginning. Off-center strikes. Imagine a quarter where George Washington's head is pushed halfway off the coin, leaving a blank crescent of smooth metal. Collectors go crazy for those. Some off-center 1989p quarters have already sold for thousands. But one specimen, perfectly misaligned yet fully dated, sent shockwaves when it hit the auction block, and then came the discovery that stunned the entire numismatic world. A 1989 quarter struck on the wrong planchet, not copper-nickel clad, but a silver disc intended for another coin. It slipped into the presses, unnoticed, and was released into circulation. One lucky collector spotted its unusual shine, tested it, and realized what it was. That single mistake turned an ordinary quarter into a $1 million miracle. Collectors were speechless. How could a small minting slip-up transform everyday change into a treasure worth $1.4 million? And yet, it happened. These rare 1989p quarters are still out there. Every day, people handle them without realizing what they're holding. One man reportedly used a rare off-metal quarter to pay for a cup of coffee, never knowing he had just given away a fortune. Now, before you go racing to check your change jar, you need to know what details to look for. Because not every 1989p quarter is valuable, only the rare ones with those shocking mistakes. First, check the coin's weight. A standard quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. But if your 1989p weighs less, or significantly more, it could be struck on the wrong planchet, the kind of error worth hundreds of thousands, even millions. Second, look closely at the rim and the strike. If the design seems off-center, if part of the lettering or date is cut off, you may have an off-center strike. The more dramatic the misalignment, the more valuable the coin. Some have sold for over $10,000, and those are the common ones, but the rarest of all, the double-struck, off-metal hybrid errors. These are the coins auctioneers whisper about, the ones collectors battle over in secret bidding wars, pushing prices into the $1 million range. In 1989, quality control at the mint wasn't as strict as it is today. Philadelphia was producing massive numbers of coins, and mistakes slipped through far more often than anyone realized. That means the odds of finding one in circulation, though slim, are very real. Think about it. That jar of quarters in your kitchen drawer, the coins jingling in your car's cup holder, could one of them be hiding a life-changing secret? Collectors are rushing to examine every 1989p they can find. Stories are spreading of coin roll hunters opening a bank-wrapped roll of quarters and pulling out a treasure worth more than their house, and yet, most people still overlook them. They see 1989 and think nothing of it. They spend it without a second thought. But you now know the truth. This coin, born from a mistake, dismissed as common, has become a legend in the coin world. And legends have a way of rewarding those bold enough to search for them. So here's what you need to remember: look for the P mint mark above Washington's ponytail. Check the weight carefully. Study the edges and alignment. Any sign of doubling, off-centering, or unusual shine could mean you're holding one of the most valuable quarters ever made, and if you find it, your life will never be the same. One coin. One mistake. One chance at $1 million miracle, because this exact quarter, the 1989p Washington quarter, could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in a grocery store register, but when a sharp-eyed collector spotted it, he realized it was worth not just a few cents, not just a few dollars, but potentially over $1 million. The 1971 D Washington quarter looks ordinary. Tens of millions were minted in Denver. It's the kind of coin you've probably held countless times in your life. But hidden among the ordinary are a handful of extraordinary mistakes. And those mistakes are what transform this pocket change into a life-changing fortune. You're sorting through an old jar of coins. Dusty, forgotten change from decades past. You see a 1971 quarter with the little D beneath Washington's portrait. You almost toss it aside. But then, something about the color looks different. The shine. The edge. And what you're holding isn't just any quarter. It's one of the rarest modern errors in U.S. coin history. Collectors were shocked when stories began circulating of a 1971 D quarter that wasn't made of the standard copper nickel clad. Instead, by an almost unexplainable mistake, it had been struck on a leftover 40% silver planchet, a blank that should have disappeared after 1970. One coin, one survivor, slipped into circulation. That tiny error is worth more than $1 million, but here's the twist that stunned the entire coin world. This wasn't discovered by a museum or a top-tier dealer. It was found by an everyday American, someone who could have spent it at a vending machine. That's the magic of coins like this. They hide in plain sight, waiting for the right pair of eyes. Now, think about it. How many people tossed their 1971 D quarters into parking meters, unaware that one coin among them was worth a life-changing fortune? How many treasures have been lost because people simply didn't know what to look for? And here's where the suspense deepens. The silver-struck error isn't the only mystery lurking in the 1971 D series. Some coins show doubling, rare instances where the design is struck twice, leaving letters and numbers with a ghost-like shadow. Others reveal weak strikes, misaligned dies, or off-center minting that send collectors into bidding wars. A single misplaced detail can push the value from a few $100s into the hundreds of thousands. That's the one on the wrong planchet. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on it because it represents a once-in-a-generation fluke. A coin born in error, destined for greatness, and here's the part that will stop you in your tracks. This isn't a coin locked away in some government vault. It's out there. In collections. In private hands. And maybe, just maybe, still sitting unnoticed in a family coin jar. But what happened next left even veteran coin experts speechless. At auction, when one of these ultra-rare 1971 D silver planchet quarters surfaced, the room erupted in disbelief. The bidding climbed higher and higher, past every expectation, until the hammer fell at nearly $1.5 million. A 25-cent coin, suddenly transformed into a ticket to financial freedom. Would you keep it as a legacy, a story to pass down through generations? Or would you cash it in and change your life overnight? That's the power locked inside the pocket change we take for granted, but here's the part most people miss. Identifying this coin isn't just about the date or the mint mark. It's about the weight. The ring. The look. Regular 1971 quarters were struck in copper nickel, weighing about 5.67 grams. But the rare silver planchet coin? It weighs more, closer to 5.75 grams. And when you drop it gently on a table, it rings with a higher, sharper tone than any clad quarter. Collectors were stunned when they realized how many of these errors could have slipped through. But only a few have ever been confirmed. Which means every 1971 D quarter you check could be the one. And don't forget the details. Look closely at the edges. A clad quarter reveals a brown stripe of copper. A silver planchet quarter shows only brilliant silver from edge to edge. That single detail could mean the difference between pocket change and $1 million payday, but here's the real kicker: most people never check. They assume every quarter is the same. They spend them on laundry, soda, gas. And in doing so, they might have already let a fortune slip through their fingers. Dealers whisper about the possibility that more of these coins are still undiscovered. That somewhere in America, sitting in a shoebox, a coffee can, or a forgotten drawer, another 1971 D silver planchet quarter is waiting. Imagine being the one to find it. Imagine walking into an auction house, your heart pounding, as experts confirm what you already know: you've struck gold in the form of silver. But what makes this story unforgettable isn't just the rarity. It's the reminder that miracles don't always announce themselves. Sometimes, they come disguised as ordinary coins, blending in until the right set of hands brings them to light. Collectors still talk about that record-breaking auction. About the gasps in the room. About the disbelief that a coin minted in such enormous numbers could harbor such a secret. And about the life-changing moment when a 25-cent piece became worth nearly $1.5 million. 1971, always check the mint mark, the small D for Denver, just beneath Washington's portrait. Weigh it carefully. Listen to the sound. Examine the edge. And never, ever assume that what you're holding is just pocket change, because here's the truth: someone, somewhere, is going to find the next one. It could be tomorrow. It could be you. This is why collectors are obsessed. Why dealers hunt tirelessly. Why everyday Americans dig through jars of change late into the night. They're chasing that dream. That possibility. That 1 in a million coin that could rewrite their destiny, and now you know the secret. You know the signs. You know what to look for. The 1971 D Washington quarter that's worth not just a few dollars, not just a few thousand, but up to $1.5 million.